Let me be direct with you from the outset, because what unfolded in the early hours of this morning demands directness. What we are witnessing is not a limited retaliatory strike. It is not a symbolic show of force. What we are witnessing is the largest coordinated drone assault on American military installations in the history of modern warfare, and the Pentagon has gone completely silent on casualty figures. That silence is not protocol. That silence is not operational security. That silence is panic. I am looking at satellite imagery that has been circulating among regional defense analysts for the past 14 hours, imagery that shows the aftermath of what Iranian sources are calling Operation Thunderous Response. What this imagery reveals is not minor damage to secondary structures. It is not disabled equipment or superficial impact craters. What these images show is catastrophic destruction across four separate United States military installations, spanning Iraq and Syria, with blast patterns consistent with precision-guided loitering munitions deployed in overwhelming numbers. According to multiple regional military sources and confirmed by footage uploaded to Telegram channels monitored by open-source intelligence analysts, Iran launched approximately 500 drones in coordinated waves beginning at 0347 local time. In the next 20 minutes, I am going to walk you through exactly why this attack represents a fundamental shift in the balance of power in the Middle East, why the Pentagon's silence reveals far more than any press briefing could, and why what happened at these four bases in the last 24 hours will reshape American military doctrine for the next decade. This is a breaking analysis you will not find replicated in mainstream Western coverage, and if you are watching this and realizing the gravity of what just occurred, subscribe now because what we are about to examine is based on verified regional reporting, technical analysis, and 30 years of studying asymmetric warfare in this theater. Let's start with geography and capability because understanding how this attack was possible requires understanding what Iran has built over the past 15 years. The four bases that were struck are not random targets. Al-Tanf in southern Syria, Al-Assad Air Base in western Iraq, Erbil Air Base in northern Iraq, and the Konoko gas field installation in eastern Syria. These are the four critical nodes of American forward deployment in the Iraqi-Syrian theater. Al-Tanf sits at the strategic intersection where Syria, Iraq, and Jordan meet. It is the base that allows the United States to block the Baghdad-Damascus highway, the land corridor connecting Iran to Lebanon. Al-Assad is the largest American air base in Iraq, home to Apache helicopters, F-16 fighter jets, and rapid reaction forces. Erbil hosts intelligence gathering operations and serves as the coordination hub for operations across northern Iraq and into Turkey. The Conoco installation, nominally a gas facility, is actually a forward operating base protecting American access to Syrian oil fields. To put this in perspective, these are not small outposts. Al-Assad alone covers approximately 20 square kilometers and houses between 2,500 and 2,000 American personnel at any given time. Erbil operates as a joint facility with Kurdish Peshmerga forces and hosts significant CIA and special operations presence. Al-Tanf, though smaller, punches above its weight strategically because of its location. Konoko represents American energy control in eastern Syria. Hitting all four simultaneously is not opportunistic, it is surgical. Now let's talk about what Iran actually deployed, because the mainstream media will describe this as a drone strike and leave it there, as if drones are all the same. What Iranian forces launched were Shahed 136 loitering munitions, also known as kamikaze drones, alongside Mohajer 6 reconnaissance platforms and what regional sources describe as Arash 2 long-range attack drones. The Shahed 136 has a range of approximately 2,500 kilometers, carries a 50-kilogram warhead, and costs roughly $20,000 per unit. Compare that to a Tomahawk cruise missile at $2 million or an F-35 sortie costing tens of thousands of dollars per flight hour. Iran deployed 500 of these platforms in coordinated waves for a total operational cost of approximately $10 million to inflict what early damage assessments suggest is hundreds of millions of dollars in destroyed infrastructure and equipment. Subscribe if you are watching this and realizing you are not getting this level of technical breakdown from CNN, Fox News, or any mainstream outlet. Now, let's discuss what actually happened on the ground, because this is where the story becomes impossible to ignore. Announcement number 1, the attack was executed in 3 distinct waves separated by 45-minute intervals, and this matters more than anything else because it reveals planning sophistication that most Western analysts refuse to acknowledge Iran possesses. The first wave, consisting of approximately 150 drones, launched from positions inside western Iran at 347 local time. These platforms flew low, below 300 feet, utilizing terrain masking to avoid radar detection. According to regional military sources cited by Lebanon's Al Mayadeen and corroborated by footage posted to military monitoring channels, The first wave struck Al-Assad Air Base in Iraq and the Conoco facility in Syria nearly simultaneously at 05:02 local time. The targets were not random. The first wave specifically targeted CRAM systems, counter-rocket artillery and mortar defense platforms, and radar installations. These are the defensive systems designed to intercept exactly this kind of attack. By destroying defensive capabilities first, Iran ensured that waves 2 and 3 would face degraded resistance. This is not luck. This is not amateur hour. This is planned sequential targeting based on detailed intelligence about base layouts and defensive positioning. According to reporting by Iran's Tasnim news agency and regional analysts, the second wave of 200 drones arrived 45 minutes later, targeting aircraft hangars, ammunition depots, and vehicle staging areas. Eyewitness accounts from Iraqi security forces stationed near Al-Assad describe sustained explosions over a 20-minute period, with secondary detonations continuing for hours afterward, indicating that munition storage facilities were hit and cooked off. The third wave, another 150 drones, arrived 90 minutes after the initial strike, targeting command and control facilities, barracks, and what Iranian sources describe as intelligence-gathering infrastructure at Erbil Air Base. The total duration of the attack from first impact to final detonation was approximately 3 hours and 40 minutes. That is not a raid. That is a sustained military operation executed with precision against 4 separate hardened targets across 2 countries. Received. That is announcement number 1. Announcement number 2, and this is the part that the Pentagon has confirmed through its deafening silence. As of this recording, 22 hours after the attack, the United States Department of Defense has issued exactly one statement. I am reading it verbatim. Quote, "We are aware of reports of drone activity targeting U.S. and coalition facilities in Iraq and Syria. We are assessing the situation and will provide updates as appropriate." End quote. That statement was released 14 hours ago. There have been no updates. There has been no casualty count. There has been no damage assessment. There has been no attribution, despite the fact that Iranian media, Iraqi resistance factions, and Hezbollah-aligned outlets have all openly claimed responsibility and published detailed after-action footage. The Pentagon's standard protocol, following an attack on American forces, is to release a preliminary casualty report within 6 to 8 hours, even if that report states 0 casualties or lists personnel as wounded. The fact that no such report has been issued after 22 hours is unprecedented in modern American military public affairs operations. Let me give you the comparison. When Iranian-backed militias struck Al-Assad Air Base in January 2020, following the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, the Pentagon released a preliminary statement within 4 hours acknowledging the attack and stating that personnel had taken shelter and no casualties were reported. That statement was later revised when traumatic brain injuries were diagnosed, but the point is that a statement was issued rapidly. When the Abbey Gate bombing occurred in Kabul in August 2021, killing 13 American service members, the Pentagon confirmed casualties within 3 hours. When the Tower 22 facility in Jordan was struck in January 2024, killing 3 American soldiers, the Pentagon confirmed fatalities within 5 hours. The current silence, extending beyond 22 hours with no casualty information whatsoever, suggests one of 2 scenarios. Either the casualty count is so high that the Pentagon is coordinating with the White House on how to release the information without triggering public backlash, or the operational security situation on the ground is so chaotic that accurate counts are not yet possible. Neither scenario reflects well on American defensive preparedness. Received. That is announcement number 2. Stay with me because this is where the narrative completely changes and where the implications for American force posture in the Middle East become impossible to deny. Announcement number 3, and this is the element that almost nobody in Western media is connecting correctly. The drone swarm that struck these 4 bases did not originate from Iran alone. According to detailed reporting by regional outlets and analysis of flight corridors tracked by open-source radar monitoring, significant portions of the second and third waves were launched from positions inside Iraq and Syria, indicating that Iraqi resistance factions and Syrian-based allies possess either stockpiles of Iranian-manufactured drones or the technical capability to assemble them locally from supplied components. This is not speculation. This is confirmed by the flight times and approach vectors. Drones launched from western Iran would require between 90 minutes and 2 hours to reach targets in western Iraq and eastern Syria. The 45-minute interval between Wave 1 and Wave 2 is inconsistent with all platforms launching from Iranian territory. The operational reality is that Iran has successfully distributed its drone warfare capability across multiple allied actors operating in Iraq and Syria, meaning that even if the United States were to strike drone production facilities inside Iran, it would not eliminate the threat posed by forward-deployed stockpiles and local assembly capacity. Furthermore, Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani issued a carefully worded statement 6 hours after the attack calling for, quote, all parties to exercise restraint and avoid escalation that threatens Iraq's sovereignty. That statement conspicuously does not condemn the attack. It does not demand accountability. It does not offer support for American retaliation. It is the diplomatic equivalent of a shrug, and it reflects the political reality that the Iraqi government, despite hosting American troops under a bilateral agreement, does not control the Iraqi resistance factions operating within its borders, and is increasingly unwilling to position itself as a defender of American interests against Iranian-aligned forces. Received. That is announcement number 3. Now let's talk about what is really happening beneath the surface, because there are 2 stories unfolding simultaneously, and the mainstream Western media is only covering one of them, and even that coverage is superficial. The surface story is that Iran launched a massive drone attack, and the United States will retaliate, maybe striking Iranian drone factories or IRGC facilities, and the cycle of tit-for-tat escalation will continue. That is the story you will hear on cable news. It is not wrong. It is just incomplete. The deeper story is about cost imposition and strategic exhaustion. What Iran has demonstrated with this attack is that it can impose catastrophic damage on American military infrastructure using platforms that cost a fraction of the defensive systems required to stop them. A single CRAM system costs approximately $15 million. A Patriot missile battery costs over $1 billion. The drones that overwhelmed these defenses cost $20,000 each. The mathematics of this exchange are devastating for the United States. Iran can produce thousands of Shahed 136 drones for the cost of a single Patriot battery, and each wave of attacks forces the United States to expend expensive interceptors or accept damage to multi-million-dollar aircraft and infrastructure. Think carefully about what this represents. When your adversary can inflict $100 million in damage using $10 million in disposable drones, and when your defensive response costs more than the attack itself, you are not in a sustainable military posture. You are in a war of attrition that you cannot win economically. The United States defense budget is enormous, but it is not infinite, and it is not structured to absorb sustained attrition campaigns against distributed, low-cost threats. American military doctrine is built around high-tech overmatch, expensive precision weapons, and the assumption that adversaries cannot match U.S. capability. Iran is not trying to match U.S. capability. Iran is exploiting the cost differential to make American presence in the region economically and operationally unsustainable. The second element of the deeper story is political. The Iraqi government did not defend American forces. It did not offer rhetorical support. It called for restraint, which in diplomatic language means, we are not going to help you respond to this. That is a significant shift from even 5 years ago, when the Iraqi government, despite internal divisions, would at least publicly align with American security concerns. The fact that Baghdad is now openly neutral in an attack on American forces reflects the reality that Iranian influence in Iraq has reached a point where the Iraqi government cannot or will not challenge Iranian-aligned militias without risking internal instability. If you own a business with logistics operations in the Middle East, if you are invested in energy markets, if you are stationed at a U.S. military facility in this region, what happened in the last 24 hours is not a headline. It is a structural warning. The security environment that American forces have operated in for the past 2 decades is collapsing, and the systems that were designed to provide force protection are being systematically overwhelmed by technologies that cost less than a used car. This pattern has repeated throughout history, and every time it repeats, the outcome is the same. Let me take you back to the Peloponnesian War, fought between Athens and Sparta from 431 to 404 BC. Athens was the dominant naval power, technologically superior, wealthier, and more culturally advanced. Sparta was militarily focused, austere, and strategically patient. The war dragged on for 27 years. Both sides exhausted themselves. Athens spent its treasury funding expeditions and maintaining garrisons. Sparta bled Athens through persistent low-intensity conflict and strategic alliances with Persia, Athens' rival. In the end, Athens collapsed not because Sparta defeated it in a single decisive battle, but because Athens could not sustain the cost of defending an overextended empire against persistent, lower-cost pressure. The parallel to today is exact. The United States is Athens, technologically superior, economically powerful, but overextended across dozens of bases in a region where it is increasingly unwelcome. Iran is Sparta, strategically patient, willing to absorb costs, and methodically degrading American capability through sustained low-cost attrition. The question is not whether Iran can destroy the US military. It cannot. The question is whether the United States can sustain the political, economic, and human cost of defending positions that are under constant, methodical assault by adversaries who do not need to win battles, only make American presence unsustainable. History suggests that empires do not collapse because they are conquered. They collapse because they exhaust themselves defending positions that no longer serve their strategic interests. So where does this leave us? Let me give you three clear paths because there is no honest middle ground here, and pretending otherwise is intellectual cowardice. Path 1. The United States retaliates with strikes on Iranian drone production facilities, IRGC command centers, and proxy logistics hubs in Iraq and Syria. Iran responds with further escalation, possibly targeting American forces in other theaters or disrupting shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. The cycle continues. Casualties mount. Political pressure builds in Washington to either fully commit to a regional war or withdraw entirely. This path leads to either full-scale conflict or strategic retreat within 12 to 18 months. The probability of this path, based on historical U.S. response patterns and current domestic political pressures, is approximately 60%. Path 2, the United States does not retaliate militarily, but announces an accelerated withdrawal timeline from Iraq and Syria, repositioning forces to more defensible locations and shifting to an offshore balancing strategy using naval and air power projection rather than permanent ground presence. This would be framed as a strategic realignment rather than a retreat, but the operational reality would be an acknowledgement that forward-deployed bases in hostile territory are no longer sustainable. Iran claims a strategic victory. American credibility with regional allies takes a significant hit. The probability of this path is approximately 25%, and it increases substantially if casualty numbers from this attack are revealed to be high. Path 3, the United States negotiates a de-escalation framework with Iran through intermediaries, likely Oman or Iraq, offering sanctions relief or frozen asset releases in exchange for a commitment to cease attacks on American forces. This would be an implicit admission that military options have failed to deter Iranian action and that economic leverage is the only remaining tool. Iran would frame this as American capitulation. The probability of this path is approximately 15% and depends entirely on whether the current administration is willing to absorb the domestic political cost of appearing to negotiate under fire. I think we are closer to path 1 than the headlines suggest, but with an exit toward path 2 if casualties are confirmed to be significant. The Pentagon's silence is not strategic ambiguity. It is operational damage control. If American casualties are in double digits, which the lack of information increasingly suggests, the political pressure to respond will be enormous. But if the response triggers further escalation and reveals that American forces cannot effectively defend against drone swarm tactics without unsustainable costs, the momentum toward withdrawal will become impossible to resist. Here are the questions I want you to take away. If the Pentagon confirms significant American casualties, will the public support a broader military campaign against Iran, or will this be the moment that shatters the illusion of American invincibility in the region? If Iran can strike 4 bases simultaneously with 500 drones and face no immediate consequences, what prevents them from doing it again next week with 1,000 drones? And if the Iraqi government will not even rhetorically support American forces under attack, what is the strategic justification for keeping those forces in Iraq at all? Tell me in the comments what path you think the United States takes from here. Tell me whether you believe the Pentagon's casualty silence is protective or political. Tell me if you think American forces can sustain this operational tempo in an environment where every base is a target and every defensive system can be overwhelmed by sheer numbers. We will keep tracking every development in Iraq, Syria, and the broader regional response. That is what we do every single day. Subscribe now. Share this analysis with everyone trying to understand what actually happened in the last 24 hours and why the silence from Washington is more revealing than any press conference could be. Turn on notifications so you do not miss the next update because this situation is developing rapidly and the next 72 hours will determine whether we are watching a contained crisis or the beginning of a regional war. We will see you in the next analysis.